Okay, so in this video we are going to see how to configure GitHub Actions language server in neovim. They recently added this language server, and we will see how to configure it properly because it's a bit tricky. Here we can see, at least by now, they say init options and empty table. So that is what I configure at first. You can simply invoke lspconfig and the setup function, and then you provide init options with an empty table. Now, if we inspect workflow, then we will be getting these annoying warnings when they say the context is invalid. So beginning, the thing is that we are not authenticated. So exploring the plugin, this is the plugin, which, well, it's not a plugin, it's a wrapper around the original language server from Microsoft, and it's just a wrapper to provide a binary so we can use the language server inside neovim. And they say they report some problems like how are we supposed to log in, and also it's unable to find a reusable workflow. Now, in order to log in, we can provide a session token inside the init options, which is a token that you should configure in your GitHub account, and you should provide a pointer to a environment variable. If we do this change and we open the file again, we will see now we have the problem that they stated inside this issue, which is we are unable to find a reusable workflow. Now, at first I didn't know how this was working, and I opened Visual Studio Code and I didn't see this error. So what I thought was, okay, let's try to find the VS Code GitHub Actions extension, and that's what I did. I found that the code for the VS Code GitHub Actions is inside this repository, and inside the contributing MD file, they specify how you can debug their code. So first I cloned the repository, and then I located a file called language server, and I started debugging the code to understand how the initialization options should be populated. And the init options, here we can see the session token is used, as I said before, and now the repos should be populated with the repository ID, the owner, the name, and the workspace URI of the actual repository that we are in. We will see it later. And also I noticed that they register a non-request function on the actions read file. So the idea of a language server is they have a client-server architecture, and the client and the server communicate based on some events. In this case, this is the action read file event, and what they are doing is they are parsing the path and reading the file and converting it to text and sending it. So I thought that we should do the same in order for the language server to work properly inside neovim. So okay, so first let's populate the init options well. So the idea inside the init options is that we also need like the repos table, where we should provide the ID of the repository, the owner, the name, the repository name, and a workspace URI, which has the format of file and the path to the actual repository that we have opened. So in order to do this, I created a function called getInitOptions, which at the same time, what I'm doing is I'm getting the repository name by invoking git remote get URL origin, and then I'm getting the actual GitHub repository open information by performing a call to the GitHub API. Then we get the ID of the repository, the owner is the organization, the repo name, and then the workspace URI. So that way we populate the init options properly. Now, we still need to do the client request, which is this code. We should transform it into Lua. And then at first I didn't know how it was all handled. So I discovered the LSP handler, which is a function that you can configure, and it takes these parameters and they return two values, the result and the error. So the idea is that inside the configuration of a language server, you can define your own handlers. In this case, this action read file is the same that we saw before in the VS Code code. And then basically what we are doing is we are transforming the URI to a file path, and then we are reading its content and sending the content to the server. Now if we hit save, if we open the repository again, we don't see any errors right now. Everything is working just like in VS Code. And in case I want to set a flag that is not allowed, then the language server will inform that the input is hello is not defined in the reference flow, which is a workflow that is inside the actual repository. So I hope everything was clear. I will leave a link to my .files. At the end, it is just about populating the handlers and the init options, which I created a function to do it, populate the init options properly with the session token and with the repos info.